The question has come from the audience that I have been talking about archetypes as what sets the context for thinking and feeling. But can I give an example or an illustration of the significance of the archetypes in the quantum world? Yes, this is very important because we are identifying the archetype and the purpose of why all this. Why all this is what I said is the subtle experiences, which begins with feeling and thinking, but ultimately feeling and thinking are contextually dependent on the archetype. In other words, the best feeling and best thinking will be guided by these archetypes. What are they? Some examples will make it clear how important they are in human life. One archetype we already have emphasized many times. In fact, existence begins with that archetype, the laws of science, truth, Sat. In Upanishad, Brahman is defined as Sat Chitananda. Sat is the beginning. The Bible begins with the realization, in the beginning there is the Word. Again, the same concept, the law, that begins the world. Archetype, if you have to give an example, begins with truth, which is the one absolute archetype. And because the archetypal land, Vijnanamaya Kosha, this universe of the archetypes, has truth as one of its primary residents, therefore all archetypes have truth value. And this is why when we experience the archetypes, that experience of course is what we call intuition. Much confusion about that because in the scientific materialist worldview, we don't have the concept of archetype, we don't need this concept. And therefore, remember, we lost grip on reality because there is no necessity of absolute nature of truth. Materialists think truth is relative. This is why materialists ultimately created this untrue world that we live now, fake news. But leaving it aside, what is another example of the archetype that you readily recognize? And that has to be the archetype of love. No human being can imagine living without love except the sociopath and the psychopath who are deranged people. If you are sane, you need love. Little sang, all we need is love. That can be debated, but it is cannot be debated that one of the needs that gives purpose to the life is the archetype of love. Why is it an archetype? Because you cannot really get a sense of archetype just by thinking. Try it and you will fail. Try to control it by thinking, you will fail. Just as you cannot control truth by thinking or by feeling, similarly same thing with love. The problem with civilization began when somebody thought that knowledge gives you power to control. And then predict and control became the motto of modern living, modern science. Science set the context of modern living as predict and control. If you can predict how the world works, you can control the world. And the archetypes are the living proof that there is no control. This is the reason that archetypes have to be there, and this is the reason that archetypes have to be quantum. They are forever moving. And the stuff that they give context to, feelings and thinkings, they are also quantum. They are also forever moving, forever changing. Archetypes. What are some of the other archetypes that are important for our life? Artistic beauty, that's their archetype. Just as scientists seek truth and everybody seeks love. Then there is goodness. Society cannot be constructed without ethics, without sense of morality, without the idea that we should be good to other people. Where did this come from? This came from the recognition of essential unity of the world. It is a potentiality. Certainly, the unity is not compulsory. If you want to stay separate, you could. But the ideal world, you should manifest unity, and one way to manifest unity is to be good to each other. So all these archetypes are in a sense taking us towards unity. And that is also very important. Continuing, wholeness, that's another archetype that is very important for us. Why are so many of us inspired to be healers? Heal the disease that arises when we are lacking unity, suffering from dichotomies. That is because they have discovered the archetype of wholeness as a very satisfactory exploration. Still, another archetype that attracts human beings is justice. And of course, there are two archetypes which are very important to us because they satisfy our low-level essential need that Darwin recognized, that is called survival. And for that need, we have two archetypes, abundance and power. These two archetypes are extremely tricky because they seem to be connected with survival, and therefore they seem to be something that if we got them, then we'd be secure completely. And the tendency of us is to define them in a very limited way, and then seems like they are the end by themselves. People go on seeking material abundance, more and more wealth, thinking that they will realize abundance. But does it happen? Do you ever get enough? No, never enough. So that's not the way. Archetypes eventually leads to, all archetypes leads to unity, because eventually you come to the conclusion that abundance is more than material abundance. And that's when it becomes an archetype that takes you towards unity. When you seek abundance not only for yourself but for others, you are combining abundance with goodness, abundance with love, abundance with justice, abundance with beauty, and you have discovered the archetypal nature of abundance. Same thing is true of power. People who seek power for prediction and control, they don't see the archetypal nature of power. Then you are limited. You think power can be used to control others, to dominate others. Power can be used in the service of these negative emotions that are built into the brain. And then when you discover the other archetypes, when you discover the unity of all things, then you realize that power can be used to empower others. And the archetypal nature of power is revealed. Then the archetype of power can lead you to unity as well. So what are these archetypes? In ancient traditions, these archetypes were called the ways to attain unity. They are seen as spiritual values, the values that will take us closer and closer to unity. And that is their beauty, that is their use, that is their purpose. They are spiritual values.